I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I'm talking about Mtume Gant, who, among many other things, is a filmmaker, a multidisciplinary artist born and raised in New York City. His work focuses on radical approaches to Black artistic expression and staying as far as he can from the mechanisms of mainstream entertainment. He is the director of multiple films, including the critically acclaimed works White Face and Spit. He is currently in pre-production for 2 films due out next year. He is also co-host with brother Adam Thomas, who was going to be here today, but the working world dragged him back. I mean, it's rough. So we'll double back with him another time. But Mtume co-hosts with Adam Within Our Gates podcast, a podcast focused on Black radical reads on cinema and movies. Mtume is also an assistant professor of film at Purchase College, where he teaches film production and cinematic literacy. Mtume, welcome to the program, brother. It's good to see you.
Welcome. Thank you, man. I appreciate it, man.
So listen, man, let me start with this. How are you on time?
I'm good on time. I mean, I got a couple hours. Today's actually not my non-teaching day, so I'm around. So let me know.
Okay, so then I want to start with obviously talking about your work, but if time permits, maybe you can join me for a discussion of some of this other stuff. I'm
totally down for sure.
Right,
I'll definitely where I can fit in. I'll definitely throw it in there.
So what I thought for today, because one of the things, frankly, and I don't mind sharing this with every. By the way, I want to talk about, by the way, I forgot to mention this. The segment that I did with Dr. Barbara Ransby on Mark Lamont Hill's Up Front on Al Jazeera about reparations, that is out. So I would like to talk about that a little bit, because at some point I'm hoping to have Dr. Ransby join me for what I'm hoping to be a live viewing of that and then post discussion, because there was a realm of disagreement between us on this issue that I don't think gets a lot of attention. So anyway, that's another thing I forgot to mention. I wanted to get back to at some point, hopefully today. We'll see. I don't know. But I just happened to see that under the notes for what I have as my first questions for you, Mtume. That's why it's not poorly placed notes there. That's why I was reminded of that. But anyway, so what frankly, I was somewhat only recently introduced to your work and to your podcast, and was thankful to be a guest on your show. But and it immediately occurred to me that this is the kind of discussion that I was at least hoping we would bring onto this platform.
Word.
So I know we are. So behind the scenes, I know that this discussion, I'm hoping at least, will be the precursor to you all doing a version of what you do with us here, because this is exactly the kind of stuff, and your approach is and experience is exactly the way I wanted to have these kinds of discussions.
Dope.
And in preparation for today, I went back to listen to one of your previous podcasts that talked about a film and a genre that actually was, maybe I wasn't really aware of this, but really had a lot to do with my young childhood, which was the Americana canon films.
Oh,
and you started by talking about Bloodsport
yes.
with Van Damme.
Yeah, man.
And Frank Dukes.
Yes, Frank Dukes.
And it was like a perfect way to, I mean, because it's like an evergreen story, like what they did with that in terms of how you all were discussing what all the mythologies it was projecting into the world is still happening right now.
Yeah.
So I wanted us to really kind of start there to introduce how you, at least I am aware, you all approach these topics. That is, I don't know. So my first question is, how does that discussion you all had about Frank Dukes and Bloodsport, and we can get into some of the details, how does that discussion, or how is that discussion emblematic of what you all do on Within Our Gates, and in terms of your approach to an analysis of film?
That's a good question. Yeah. I would say, starting off, as me and Adam are both, people who grew up in this country, we are all people who grew up in this country. Our ideologies are shaped, or our brains are shaped by the things that have been given to us, media. And, as you become more politically conscious and more socially conscious, you begin to realize the propaganda that's given to you in these movies, right? Mm-hmm. And from day one, and I know from myself, one of the things that I just don't believe is don't read too much into it. I just don't buy that, right? You're reading too much into it, right? You're reading too much into this, because then you begin to realize that people with politics make movies, even if it's inadvertent. You know what I'm saying? I tell people about a film like Terminator, right? Like Terminator is a movie all about the Cold War. It's a Cold War reaction film, right? And if you read an interview with James Cameron, he'll tell you that. He says, I was trying to envision what would happen if the Cold War ramped it up itself so much that we began to go to AI running it for us. And then would be our ultimate demise. So he wanted to show the demise that humanity would happen. But he said that only comes out of a situation. So the canon thing kind of happened by accident, because I had saw the canon doc some years ago. The doc is called what's the name of the document? Let me see if I can get it right.
Didn't I write it down?
Electric Boogaloo, the wild untold story of canon films. And it's about the Golan and Globus, who had one of the most controversial and wild production companies in the history of movie making in the globe. I'm not even talking about just America, really the globe. I mean, they're both from Israel. So part of that, the fact that they're not from this country, they're international, I think is part of the context. And also their films kind of took a weird international bent in a way, which I think is very important as well. So, and
I just want to be clear, because when I looked at the title of your podcast, I thought you were going to be talking about the canon, and in other words, film canon. So I was like, oh, this is going to be dope. I didn't even realize how many films I've grown up watching are from this company called Canon. Yeah. So I was like, when you started talking about that, I was like, wait a minute. So it took me in a whole, I wasn't ready for where you all were going. Anyway, so I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on what we're talking about here, because initially I wasn't, and it was a beautiful surprise, but I was like, damn, they made a lot of movies that I grew up on watching in the 80s. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's a generational thing. Like I think I probably had when I was a kid, I definitely sought out canon films. I thought they were these edgy things that, like, if I saw that canon logo, I got kind of excited. The Van Damme movies, some of the Chuck Norris movies, Break-In, people don't know is a canon film.
Right.
People just don't know is a canon film, which is a major, and one of their most successful films, period. Maybe their most successful film, actually, to be honest with you, financially. It helped them do a whole lot of stuff. But when Adam had made a post, and shout out to Adam who can't be here, but Adam had made a post about Frank Dukes, because many people, I don't know if many people know about Frank Dukes in the film Bloodsport, which stars Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's supposed to be this true story based on film about a thing called the Kumite, which is a secret martial arts tournament that happens in Hong Kong, in the caverns of Hong Kong that no one knows about, and it's about invitation. And Frank Dukes was the first Westerner, aka white man, to go there and win it. All right, but after several sources over the years, even Jean-Claude Van Damme himself has basically come out and said that Frank Dukes was a complete liar, and his whole thing of the Kumite is a complete hoax. There's never been a Kumite, and all of these things. So Adam had made a post about it on Twitter. I forgot what the context was. And I said to Adam, I was like, but have you seen the canon documentary where they talk about, all this stuff? And he's like, no. And he went on and watched it. And I know his jaw dropped. I had seen it a couple of years ago. And kind of what you're saying now, this context had came to me around the things that I grew up with, but also, and I think this is where we got into pun territory with the title Americana Canon, we began to realize that some of these movies like Delta Force, which is a film on the podcast that we talk heavily about, they have the germ of a lot of what you see incel culture and not even that right wing. I mean, even kind of liberal ideology, war thirsty people is very much embedded in those types of movies. And those people who are very much like that are people who grew up in that era watching these movies. And Cannon wasn't the only one who did them, but they were definitely one of the leaders of that. And that's really what Within Our Gates does. Like, you know, I think we could sit there. We didn't want it to be a podcast where we, you know, grabbed a bunch of Black movies and talked about how great this was or how bad this was. We were like, no, how do we as Black political people, Black radical people, view the movies that are being sold to all of us as Americans? And, you know, and we have a place in all of that stuff, you know, especially things, and including things like canon, when you get to like Break In, or, you know, the racialized characters they'll have in certain movies, like the Death Wish series, which they continued on.
And
it's people don't
because
realize
it's that theme that's in Bloodsport that's exaggerated there, because they go extra, like, by claiming this is based on a real story. I started thinking like movies like American Sniper, where the guy was a real person, but his story, depending on what you read, is mythologized. The amount of kills, the distance of the kills, the perfection of the, you know, his service, the perfection, his you know, the racial performance in movie versus real life. It's like, but it's this idea, you know, that we grew up on, obviously going back even, you know, obviously before this era that you were talking about here, but that this white man comes into this non-white world and does everything that these non-white people do better than they do, can beat them, like Tarzan can outdo the jungle than better than the Africans. You know what I'm saying? Like,
totally, 100%.
So here he comes, and then, you know, and then here's this dude, and they did part of the Bloodsport mythology was this is based on a real story. This white man who really was in the military, which all that turns out to be fake, you know, goes to this, you know, mysterious tournament and beats up all these
right. And of course the
whole Asian world.
The major villain is this, you know, deranged Chinese man, you know, played by Bolo Yoon, who is like the grand villain. He's ruthless, and, you know, this idea of civilizing the savages as well, because, you know, Frank Dukes, even though he can fight with them, he has a civilized way. At the end, he doesn't kill him. He says, makes him say mate, you know, he gives up, you know, he shows mercy. It's complete hogwash.
So yeah, so I didn't mean to cut you off, because then you do all start talking about the whole Death Wish thing. And again, I was thinking about the point you just raised, that it's one thing to talk about Black films and, you know, good or bad or this or that, or even radical films or alternative films, but it's another to talk about the films that Black radicals grew up watching.
Yes. Well, like, that's a thing.
Yeah,
that's a thing, though. You know, I this is some years ago, back when Django Unchained came out, and I've never been a Tarantino guy. Maybe when I was like 14 or something like that, when I first saw Reservoir Dogs, and, you know, I wanted to see some blood or something like that.
Ever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. and then quickly, once my political kind of knowledge began to kind of ramp up, it just made me uncomfortable. By the time I got into college, I was done with it. But around the time Django Unchained came out, I remember there was like this strange bedfellows relationship with that movie and some Black people that I saw to be political or radical, right? They would say, you know, well, look, man, we're seeing Django go out here and shoot the white man and whatnot. You know, it can't be a bad thing, you know. And you saw definitely some Black liberals, people like Torre, getting into that. And I remember he wrote a whole piece about how Django is some kind of symbol we should embrace and whatever. It was complete. He's BS, but I even saw some Black people who I knew were out on the street in protests, doing anti-establishment work. They were taking these establishment films and these establishment characters made by people like Quentin Tarantino or other whites, and trying to say we should like embrace them. And I was always really weirded out by it. I didn't get it. And it took me years later to realize that it's because of the stuff that they grew up on, that we all grew up on. They still haven't analyzed that, right? Because even they'll invoke older characters from the 80s that if you look back and you really deconstruct them, you go, my goodness, these people don't really stand for things that we should be standing with.
No, I mean, and well, first of all, I made a note. I forgot until I listened to that podcast. I forgot Forrest Whitaker was in Bloodsport.
Oh man, it's hilarious, dude. His character is hilarious. He's always frustrated by everything. The white guy's always like slapping him down, and it's funny because I was like, I feel like Forrest made those choices. It's really interesting that he does it. The white guy cuts him off every night. And he just kind of growls in the back. It's kind of hilarious.
So I made a note. I was like, was he Magic Negroing again in that film? But that really technically he really wasn't. He wasn't really the Magic Negro in that film, if I remember correctly. He was he was just sort of the side character because he didn't really help Van Damme transcend. That wasn't his role. All the beaten up Asians played that role for him in that movie.
Exactly. Well, but Forrest played like another character. He plays like this kind of, like I said, this constantly disrespected black man. It was almost like a Marx Brothers routine. Just not done that well. And he's kind of like the dope, played into the side, which is, Forrest is interesting in his years of work and the kind of roles he accepts,
Hey man, real quick, we got to back up here because there was something that somebody brought up. I'm going to come back to the questions and comments a little bit later. I don't want to get too much into them, but there was one where someone was, I knew I was going to lose it, but I didn't want to forget to come back to it. Anyway, the question was, we need a shirt check. I can't find in other words, what's on your shirt? Here we go. Can we get a shirt check? Rashid is asking.
This is human right. Mm-hmm. Let me get it in the camera. Human right. Let me do it like this. Human right. Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
My homie Rabbi Darkside is such t-shirts he made. MC out of New York. Yeah.
Okay. Right on. And just for the record, I got the Kaepernick stand up for what? Yeah. Like stand. Okay. Anyway. Okay. But you did also, I didn't want to cut you off entirely because you started to also talk about something I wanted you to raise here. First of all, you talked about a film I had forgotten. Oh my God, that I have watched this as a very young child and probably should not have been watching it. The Last American Virgin film.
Wow.
That you ended up talking about. But in the context of Death Wish, and then I had written down Incel. I don't even know what that was. So I need you to explain what that meant. You kept talking about Incel. So I'm assuming that's was shorthand for something that I never caught. So anyway, those are some of the other notes I have in there that I wanted to ask you about.
So the Incel, I think I can link the Last American Virgin and all those movies to it. So the whole thing with Incel, what we had talked about was, a lot has been talked about Incel culture in today's, current landscape, the internet culture, the things that they're into. And, you get these people from about I'm 41, so some of them are around a little younger than me, but you find a lot of in my age range, or really the people who started it are really in my age range, right? And these like a lot of young guys are kind of tapping onto it. But when we look through the canon films, like Last American Virgin, Delta
so wait a minute,
Force,
Incel is internet.
Let's get the actual.
Yeah, because I'm totally confused by what I was. You kept referring to it, and I was trying to pick it up in the conversation, but I wasn't getting it.
Right, the port of involuntary celibates, a member of an online subculture unable to online subculture who define themselves as unable to find a romantic or sexual partner despite desiring one. Right. So the 4chan online right wing, the men's rights kind of people, the guy who's the white dude from Vice who's the big right winger, Garrett. I'm talking about. What's his name?
Oh no, I don't actually. Vice, I don't know
who started it. And
so that's funny. Involuntary celibate. Okay, so from 0 to 15, I was just maybe 0 to maybe I'll probably be younger. Let's say 0 to 13 or 14. Maybe let's say 0 to 15. I was just celibate. From 15 to 18, I was involuntarily celibate.
Meaning they made me that way.
I just couldn't find, I just couldn't get there. I just couldn't get there. That's all I'm saying. It's maybe a bad joke, but I'm saying I was trying to end my celibacy. I just couldn't. I couldn't find the willing partners. I was like just the corny dude who was like, no, okay, no. Anyway, bad joke. But involuntary celibacy.
Well, their whole thing and their whole platform with the kind of men rights thing is the way culture has made it. It's made this kind of culture of men who are not valued by society, so forth and so on. And it's mostly white, but there's as we've seen recently, there's black. So they would have said to you in that period that this is not the world is messing with you. Women are messing with you. Yes. Women are doing something negative to you. Why does the Kaepernick brother on your shirt get the ladies, but not you, Mr. Intellectual? And they would play on this kind of idea that, you are being maligned.
It just wasn't that. In other words, it wasn't that I had no game or I just poorly dressed or corny. It was because the women were doing something to me.
Right, exactly. And
that's cool. I can rewrite my whole narrative now. Thank you.
And a lot of them do that. And Gavin McInnes was the guy's name I was talking about. Gavin McInnes.
Oh, okay. I don't even
know
who
started the Proud Boys and all.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The Proud Boys he started Vice back in the day.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's deep.
He's the guy who started Vice. Okay. Yeah, he hasn't been involved with them for many, many years, but he's one of the kind of beginners of like modern hipsterism and all that stuff, the whole Williamsburg hipsterism and all that stuff, which is totally combined with a lot of this incel culture stuff, but so they would tell you that. And then you have these men's rights organizations who do these things, like I knew some brothers who got caught up with it, not recently, but I would say about a decade ago. I had some friends who got caught up with it, and they would say, it's not that you don't have game. It's just that the kind of game that you have is obsolete. So you need to kind of get into
Isn't that the same thing?
Exactly. So they would do that whole. Did you hear about the whole pickup artist thing, Pua? You ever heard about this?
I did. But I don't pay attention to that stuff. So it just But it did cross my. Okay.
So I knew some brothers who got up into that. I remember in the early aughts, I knew some brothers who got up into that. Or maybe not that early. Maybe like 08, 09, or like around 2010. I knew some brothers who got up in on it, and it's the whole thing of like dominating women in a way that makes them, because they want men who can control them and all this stuff and all this really, really wild stuff, right? But I remember, over the years, I've listened to podcasts. Shout out to people like T from Champagne Sharks, who's done really great deep dives on that stuff, and various other sources that I've read. And when I was watching back these canon movies, I was looking back and I was like, these types of worldviews are exactly like those people. And people like Gavin, let me actually see how old Gavin McInnes is.
When you brought that up on your show, you talked about the kind of kid I actually think I became in part for at least a few years because of all these movies. Because I was the kid who was like, I'm just going to be the nice guy. I'll be the nice, goofy guy. And the only key difference for me was that I was either, I was a pretty good athlete. I was, pretty physically, capable or strong, and I had a temper. So unlike some of the characters in these movies, I was prone to a little more conflict and combativeness. But in terms of my general overall approach to women, I was like, I'm just going to be the nice. I'm going to wait for her to realize that the man she's chasing. So that's why
I had a period like that myself. Yes.
So that's, so that's why, passing me by the far side, all of that really resonated with me.
Yeah,
You know what
emotional.
I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That I was him. You know what I mean? When she's finished with him, when she realizes that he's the problem, she'll find, because all these movies like Last American Virgin, and there were so many, even the first Nick Cage movie that I remember seeing, the Valley Girl movie that he was in.
Oh yeah,
Did
Valley Girl, right?
Thing.
Yes.
I think it was called Valley Girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the same kind of thing. Once the woman once she realizes the one that's got her attention now is the bad guy, you'll find me. It doesn't.
But that was big in the 80s model, even in the John Hughes model, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
This which is all kind of really tied up to class envy and his very, rest in peace, but his very strange relationship to class that he had. He was a very.
That's a good point.
You go through his movies and you look at his I would say classism, but also this kind of I guess like self like what is it? What do they call it when you beat yourself up in religion? Kind of masochistic, but I know what you're saying. It's the where you like whip yourself.
Yeah.
He would do that because he grew up with this big class envy of Ferris Bueller is like this huge fantasy he has of the life that he never was able to have.
Self-flagellation.
Self-flagellation. There you go. He would just do this kind of self-flagellation. In other movies, like what's his other one that he has with
16 Candles. I mean, I watched all of them joints.
Some kind of wonderful.
Yep.
I think it's like even the most preeminent one where he's in love with the rich girl, but the girl next door is the one he's ignoring. And even in movies, he'll have these little weird conversations. He even has in Pretty in Pink. There's this weird conversation around communism. That's just really odd that I've always wanted to like talk about because it sits there oddly and doesn't really make any sense to be in a movie like this. But it's just like, what are you talking about? But it's clearly him having some kind of working out something about American society, but he doesn't really generate that himself. But then you're going back into like Golan and Globus, who were like proud Americans. They were really into being, Americans and being part of American society and pushing American values. And, Last American Virgin was a remake of a film that they did in Israel, which was a very controversial film there. And it's funny, I didn't see that film until I was actually in my 20s.
I've never seen that film, and I had never heard of it till you all talked about it on your podcast. Something about a popsicle. Was that the one?
Yeah, lemonade. Was it something lemonade popsicle or something? I'm gonna get lemon popsicle, right? Yeah, and I had found out about it
sounds
because
dirty.
It does sound well. It was, but it was apparently in Israel. Like it was banned. People were like, we don't like this movie. And it wasn't banned. Like as close as they would get to banning, they would totally say this movie's a little bit too much. I found out about The Last American Virgin from a group of white kids that I went to college with, and I studied acting when I was in college. I went to got my fine arts degree in that. And this was like a movie for them. They were like, man, The Last American Virgin, bro. Like, I was like, okay, I want to watch this with y'all. Because, sometimes I would get intrigued. Like, what were these white boys doing when they grew up? Because
plus, you pointed out importantly in the podcast that they had good weed. So, that was an important part of the invitation. Like, we cannot underestimate the value of that component.
Yes, you cannot.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, for real. And I started watching this movie and I was like, oh man, I'm getting their whole pathology about how they see themselves when it comes to women, their own sexual virility and all this stuff. And I was like, this is just because the whole plot of the movie, I haven't seen it in a really long time, but it's about like, these young men and like them figuring out sex and this girl who's like in that they really like, who likes this much more cool guy, and it's the whole incel that we have now playbook in a movie. And I was just like, and I didn't know that back then, but going back when I was watching the doc, I remembered I had that, and I said, wow. And then you go into things like Delta Force, where you look at their politics, that because they're all very right wingers, and into, bomb the Middle East and all these countries. And Delta Force, which we talk about on the pod, is as racist a piece of propaganda as any film I saw that came out of Nazi Germany.
That's my note to ask you. I was like, damn, because I didn't go back and watch it. I watched it at some point as a kid, but anyway, please elaborate.
About 5 years ago, I had started doing an investigation of 80s military films on a personal tip. I had no agenda outside of that. Because I grew up with them. Movies like Iron Eagle with Lou Gossett Jr.
They try to slip that past us, put the brother in there, man. I was like, that's messed up, man.
Get us on the side. My dad was all about that, but we watched it together. It was one of the movies that me and my dad watched together. Iron Eagle, Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen. The list goes on and on and on. And Delta Force was one that I remember. So I said, let me watch this. So I didn't pay for it. I BitTorrented. I was like, let me BitTorrent this movie. And this is before I think this was actually up right there. And they had a whole series.
I just wanted to remind people, right? There was a whole rack of these.
There was a whole rack of them. Lee Marvin's last movie.
Lee Marvin's last
movie. Lee Marvin's last movie. A lot of people were in that movie too. A lot of great, well-known actors. We talk about it on the pod, but I watched Delta Force and I was horrified. It comes on. People don't know what Delta Force is about. It's a film about, I guess the military unit, the Delta Force, and there's a plane that's like the TWA, and I don't know if people remember from the 80s the famous TWA plane hijacking, and they're playing off of that, and this plane is hijacked. That's going. I don't know where I can't remember where it's going, but it's hijacked by a group of Islamic insurgents, right? One of the Islamic insurgents is played by white Robert Forster.
You killed me with that, because as you two talked about, like, for a lot of us, we try to see him as like he's one of the good white guys. He shows up in Jackie Brown. He's in Catch 22. He's in all these films we've seen. He's like the cool,
It's a very well-known political film from the late 60s.
And you got my man in full makeup.
Brown face. And it's funny because you don't realize it at first, because you're used to seeing Robert Forster in all these other types of roles. And then I'm watching it and I'm like, and I remember the title said Robert Forster was going to be in the movie. I was like, I don't remember him being in the movie, right? Because as a kid, I didn't know who he was, right? So I'm watching it, and then I think about 45 minutes through, I went, yo, that's Robert Forster. And it just blew my mind. So they hijacked the plane because they want to, protest what's happening to the Islamic people, and the Delta Force has to go rescue these people. And then there's Jewish people on the plane, right, and Christians, and they beat up the military soldiers and beat up the Jews. They lined them up. And another, I said this in the pod, some cinema people who are really cinema addicts, a very famous German actress is in it. She is a Palme d'Or winner. Like, she's in some of the most famous world films by a director named Werner Fassbinder. Her name was Haile Shagula. She's in the film.
And is this dude? I meant to ask you that when you talked about it on the show. Is this Fassbender related to this famous Fassbender today? Just it was just a popular name.
They're actually slightly. There's a popular name, and they're slightly spelled different.
Oh, okay.
It's one is Fassbender, one is Fassbinder. I think Fassbinder is the director. But I guess it must be probably a popular name in Germany.
Okay.
So, but Haile Shagula is in this movie, and I'm just like, I later found out, if you watch the documentary, they would pay, premium dollar, for these movies. Like Martin Balsam, who was a really well-known actor in the 50s, movies like 12 Angry Men.
That's my movie too. I love that
movie. 7 Days. I like Martin Balsam's a great actor. 7 Days in May, which is a really good movie. He's in that. and he's in this movie, and they would just, that's why Lee Marvin did it. They would just give him all this money. Lee Marvin by that time was no longer, in movies.
Nobody's calling anymore, right?
Exactly, and though Lee Marvin wasn't necessarily like guy with great politics, but it's they definitely were able to buy their way. And this movie, the way the Arab people are portrayed are just so caricaturish. I mean, they're sweating at every moment. They get angry. They're irrational. They're like blistering. And then, of course, you're the Delta Force with led by Chuck Norris, right? And they're bumbling the Arab people. They can't get it together. And it's funny when the Delta Force goes into whatever mythical Arab country this is in. I don't even think they name the country, right? They just go into a country, right? When they go in, they just kick all their ass. It wasn't even when you watch a really good military movie, there's a push and pull,
sure.
Right? Even like a Nazi American, the Nazis they're advancing, and no, they go up in there and it's just butt kick for an hour and a half.
I'm telling you, I was sharing this story with a friend of mine again. I always remember Rambo, I think almost got my arm broke because when after seeing the movie, when I ended up in the military and tried to pick up an M60 with one hand like he did, and he's just in there wiping out all of Vietnam by himself with this M60, and I tried to pick the joint up, and I was like, wait a minute.
I can't do that.
Can't do that and feed the thing with the rounds feed. I was like, get the hell out of here. I was like, what is he doing? Anyway,
to top it all off, they have a sequence when Chuck Norris goes to fight the final Robert Forster, right? He finds him in a home, whips his butt in Chuck Norris fashion. He's not fighting Bruce Lee again, so now he's going to get his butt. He's beaten Robert Forster's butt. And at the end of it, he walks out. Robert Forster's in a car. Chuck Norris has this motorcycle in the movie that he has. He sits on the motorcycle. He turns it around. And at the back of the motorcycle are two missiles that are right next to Chuck Norris's butt. And he shoots the missiles at Robert Forster and blows him up. So it looks like from his ass is coming two missiles. And I said, this is the most disrespectful piece of propaganda I may have ever seen come out of this country. I mean, it's Birth of a Nation levels. I mean, I'm not describing it how bad it is. It's a movie, I think I said on the pod, I will never tell you to watch it. Just know that when you watch it, you are watching something so disgusting. It is so, and it's funny. I think Roger Ebert gave it a thumbs up.
Yeah,
he was funny though.
He was, he had his, he had his issues for sure. But
right.
But going back to something you said earlier that I think is really important, that I'm always trying to make the point similarly that you can never overestimate the intent in these films. And so when people are always saying you're doing too much, you overthinking it, it's just a movie. First of all, we've even shown even in the literature from their own perspective, this is not just entertainment. There is a politics to all of this for the people who put all of this together, at least. But going back to that point that you made, if we could try to draw this line, that it seems like there is a thread we could connect at least between this incel culture claim of largely white men being denied their prizes based on the failures of other people, connected to these films, these super propagandistic pro-American, the white man writ large is being denied his prize of the world and therefore has to, shoot missiles at his ass to kill, white men in brown face. I mean, is that, I don't know, does that thread work? In other words, is there this connection? Is like Death Wish the militarized Last American Virgin type of movie? Is like a combative version of the virgin that is being denied. That is, the Chuck Norris, the white man being denied the penetration into other people's lands and resources or whatever? I don't know.
The reason why I think it fits, I would say yes, because if you look at go back to like the pickup artists, right? Their whole thing is you must take, right? So they don't encourage men to then go off and be like nice to women. They, live in your power, right? Find your power. You must even I'm not necessarily them, but I've heard this from other types of, men's rights or kind of men, how to get women type of things is like, you must assert your power, coerce, the power of coercion and things like that. And it's part of your rights, like if you go back to Elliot Rodger, right? What was Elliot Rodger's whole thing? The fact that his whiteness, even though he was part Asian, he couldn't tap into his whiteness. He was very angry about that because he saw that the whiteness that he had was this, should be this access card.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. Who we?
Elliot Rodger was the shooter with Santa Barbara.
Oh, right. Oh, right.
And remember, he wrote the whole manifesto. He wrote the whole manifesto about why he did it. And he talked about, I'm half white. Why isn't this whiteness getting me this?
Forgetting these people's names. Yeah,
we shouldn't remember. I only remember them because of these conversations, right?
No, but
and you look at these movies. These movies give permission for you to feel that way. You watch Bloodsport. This white man is going off and over there, and like, because like the first thing that Frank Dukes does is on his first battle he breaks the record,
right?
Right, like he breaks the knockout record on his first fight. I had Bloodsport's one of those movies that when it comes on I watch it because I find it so intriguing, right? And I always notice he doesn't even take off the top of his gi until about his fourth or fifth fight in.
Oh, so he's not even stressed yet.
No, dude, he's not even stressed. He just kind of like kicking, like he's doing his thing, right? Like he doesn't even take off his gi. It's like his first fight. So it's like they embody that. And I don't know the last time you've ever watched Death Wish. Even the original one is.
It's been a long time.
It's one of the most right wing film. Even back. What's funny is even because the 70s, was so well. They said it was left bent. You can debate how lefty 70s American movies were, but they definitely were a bit more politically leaning leftward than movies are now. But they even said back then that Death Wish was a very right wing movie, which was interesting because we talked about another film later. A movie called Joe, which was also made by the Cannon guys. Yeah,
I've never seen that, but you said it was like the Taxi Driver before Taxi Driver.
It is. It's a very. It's a. I say it's a fascinating failure. But Death Wish, what it does, and I'll tap on that in a moment. Death Wish is this movie where those right wingers at the time, it did very well, and conservatives really loved that film because they felt all these other movies were not speaking to them. So they like Death Wish. Hollywood actually made something, and Death Wish being, his wife is sexually assaulted, so he basically goes out and just gets revenge. And most of the people he's getting revenge on are poor white, black people, Latino people. And then they just, as the Death Wish series goes on, once Golden Globus takes it, it just becomes more and more absurd. Even where when they worked on the set, they were completely misogynistic and totally horrible to their and racist to the people that they worked with. But Joe was a very interesting film starring Peter Boyle, and I forget the other guy's name who starred in it. He didn't have like too much of a big Hollywood career after that, but it's a film about a white businessman whose daughter, played by Susan Sarandon, her very first film, actually, is a hippie druggie in the East Village, and he goes to find her, and he encounters her boyfriend, white guy who's a drug dealer, and kills him. He murders him. in a rage. He's bugged out, walks into a bar, and he meets Joe, played by Peter Boyle right here.
Keep America beautiful. Wow.
who and he meets Joe, who is this right winger. And one thing I didn't say about the other guy, I forget what the guy. Compton is the guy's name. Compton is the guy who murders his daughter's boyfriend. Compton is very rich. Joe is very working class. So it's this convergence of the working class white male and the rich white male finding a point of bonding around their hatred of liberalism, of hippieism, of all that stuff. And the film is fascinating because it actually does depict that, I think, in a very, very, very real way. And I think especially people who are kind of mystified by Trump, I told them they should watch this movie and why poor whites were into someone who was clearly rich. Why were they into him? I was like, well, no, you need to watch Joe. You'll see there have been moments in history where they find a convergence, where they realize they need each other. But Joe's ending is really fucked up. And
where does that yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Peter Boyle, to the point where Peter Boyle disowned the movie because right-wingers. Wow. Yeah, Peter Boyle was a very interesting guy. Shout out to Peter Boyle, who I saw a couple of interviews with him about it, and his thoughts on the movie and what it meant politically. He said he just couldn't get by because right-wingers began to identify with the film, and he just said, I can't ride with that, and he wouldn't endorse it after that, which speaks to the integrity that he had as an actor. But
when I look at anyway, before I forget, I just wanted Michael Douglas is Falling Down. I just wanted to ask, where does that fit with this? But I don't want you to lose the point you were just about to make.
Well, I think Falling Down is a precursor to a movie like Joe. I think. I mean, Joe's a precursor to a movie like Falling Down, right? Like, it's funny. I rewatched Falling Down the other day, and Falling Down is equally as conservative a film
because it starts with him killing a Mexican. Isn't that how the whole thing starts?
Exactly. Right. And Falling Down, I think, was one of those movies where they try to rehash that 70s kind of rawness of Taxi Driver, but Taxi Driver has its own problems. I don't want to act like Taxi Driver is this bastion of good politics. It isn't, but Falling Down is clearly out of the Reagan era as well, though. The kind of Reagan era view of, the world is enclosing around good people, and white man has been pushed into a corner, and when they push out, they're going to become this, right? And they become these complicated people, and so forth and so on. And it's but yeah, Joe, I think Joe's a better movie than Falling Down. Joe has some really, the ending is bad, and I also point out the guy who directed Joe, John G. Avildsen, he's famous for a couple of other movies, The Karate Kid.
Oh, what?
And Rocky.
What?
Yeah, and if you watch Joe, it kind of makes sense because his movies are all about underdogs. About these underdogs. But then if you look at Rocky, think about it. He's the white guy who takes out the black dude, right? Karate Kid. Granted, he's the
twice. And then Russia. On his way to getting Russia. I was like,
which is like the most absurd of them all. But then you have the Karate Kid, which, granted, he's not fighting. Well, in the second one, he does fight someone from Asia. But the first one, he's fighting some suburban kids. But it definitely is, this kind of passing on of the Eastern knowledge onto the bed of Westerners, and how we can, take it into our American, society. And I don't want to say the Karate Kid does like a blood sport kind of thing where he's better at it because he's clearly that Daniel's kind of a fool. But at the same, exactly. At the same token,
and it's the same thing with the incel thing. The girl falls in love with him after realizing her boyfriend is the bad guy. It's the same story. It's the same thing.
And that's his move. But that became kind of his movies from Joe. Is another movie that I'm actually going to try to watch today called Save the Tiger with Jack Lemmon that I've heard is very good, but he's into this kind of underdog thing. And Joe, granted, a much more politically in your face film, has, you see the seeds of Rocky in it. You could totally get after a certain point, oh, this is the guy who made Rocky. Interesting. It makes sense.
Wow. Listen, did you see the Netflix Karate Kid joint? I watched the first season.
Oh, you talking about
the reboot or whatever?
I did.
And I will say this. I will say this because I only watched the first Karate Kid, so a lot of the other ones I didn't watch. But so some of but what I really did, I liked how they told the story from the villain's perspective. They were like I was like, wait a minute. Because they had to think it was like, wait a minute, Daniel wasn't the good guy. Like he was not the good guy. Anyway,
but that's an interesting thing because I actually think one of the interesting conversations that I have with people around that show, Cobra Kai, right around that show, was are they trying to tap into an empathy? Because Johnny, if you think of who does Johnny represent? He represents the
lost white man.
The lost white man. So are they trying to tap into all those white guys who thought they were going to be big shit, right? And they're now, working as truck driver, or they have a middle class job and they're not big shit anymore. They're not sought after. And that twerpy guy that you couldn't stand, he's now successful.
That twerpy so-called person of color at that. Yeah. Like I know Daniel is not white, but I think he represented a less waspy and and connection to Asia that made him.
I totally agree with you. I think being Italian, LaRusso, I've noticed in the show I feel like he looks a bit more brown than he actually did totally than in the original Karate Kid. And of course, Mr. Miyagi playing his presence in general being, it symbolizes something, but yeah, no. I totally think they're trying to tap into that crowd of people and find some kind of emotional bond with them, which I find the show then really weird. I've watched all 3 seasons. It gets a little too ridiculous as the seasons go on. I'll be curious how you feel about the other seasons as they go on, but it's really interesting to see how they're tapping into that narrative.
Yeah. Listen, we, unfortunately, we got to start to make way for Davon Love, who's going to come up in a few minutes. But there's at least one thing. One of the other stories that I had on my list of things to cover today, that I don't know where I'll be able to get to, but it seems relevant to the conversation we're having here. So let me just get you to I don't want to put you on the spot, so feel free to recuse yourself if you feel. But this wait a minute, this because I almost just want to put this up with no comment. Kind of related to this conversation of the impact of propaganda, global, the media as a wing of imperialism. We know that Prince Philip passed the other day, but this I found particularly disturbing as a story in the BBC that was sent to me early this morning. The Vanuatu tribes mourning the death of their god. Prince Philip corresponded with villagers over the years and sent pictures of himself holding a ceremonial club they gave him. So like I said, this is one of this right here. So I'll just say this right here, brother Mtume, when I say we can never underestimate the impact or the politics packed into commercial media product. This is it. This is what I'm talking about. Because I would not think this would be the response. This would not be the response. Anyway, so feel free to say anything or nothing. This was something I just wanted to bring up today. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how much you've like studied like the history of like documentary film.
And yeah, a little bit, just a little bit.
So you know, if you like, documentary film has its origins in you know, really, I'll say it plainly, in rich white people going into what they would call the third world, or developing world, or whatever various kind of phrases are put upon that, and doing these kind of like experiments of the savages, right? Where they would come in, and I put savages in quotations. I do not believe that they're savage, but they would do these kinds of civilization tests. So they would go in and give them things, right? You know, like give them a basketball and watch them dribble and see what they can do, and so forth and so on. And there's actually
a picture of themselves holding a club that they were
exactly given. Right. And documenting for movies like Nanook the North, which is a very famous early documentary going on, you know, this was a general practice. Even some documentaries that are just, you know, because a lot of documentary also has its roots in like home movies, where these very rich people who had access to cameras, they would go in and just take home movies of their trips, and then like, you know, splice them together and then show their friends, you know, at a party when they would come back home, right? And when I look at stuff like this, I realize how much of media's interaction with the world outside of, you know, Britain or America or the, you know, the West is still in that tradition. Because this is totally something you would see in a 1930s documentary about going, you know, to spend time with Aboriginal people in Australia or New Zealand or something, right? It's totally that. We gave them a picture and they saw them as God and so forth and so on. And I'm like, are you really serious? Like this, when I look at that, I see the same practice, and which is really interesting. If you think about documentary film today, you realize how much that hasn't even changed and how it has literally influenced how documentaries work overall. But I'm just seeing a continuance of this tradition. This is really, really quite the gall that they would do this.
Yeah, anyway, it's not yeah, like I said, it just seemed to be fitting with the conversation we were having.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and then
sorry about that. Yeah,
but I think this is like the total project, right? It's the way they go about framing the world for us. So, you know, I have noticed with the whole Prince Philip thing that there is this need to still represent the royal family as this institution that needs at least some kind of reverence. You know, like, I mean, and then you even see how some Black people now participated because of Meghan Markle, you know, and her inclusion or exclusion, as she'll say it, from the royal family, right? But
they thought the baby was going to be too dark.
Yeah, so but then she, you know, it's clearly her only issue with it is not her only issue with the royal family is that they won't accept her, not the fact that they're a royal family to begin with. You know, she has no problem with that. But you go to all these movies, the way the media shapes it, there is a narrative that they have to persist and create through popular culture, media narrative about the world outside of it, right? That either it's hostile or they really love us. You think that, you know, Prince Philip, we know we think about Prince Philip, but guess what? Those people on the ground, they actually really like him. And it's like, nah, man, dude, you threw him a picture, you took a picture, you know, and you wrote a story. That ain't evidence of nothing.
So let me show you while you're here. We talked about Bloodsport. Let me show you one more Bloodsport story from yesterday, from this weekend, that I wanted to bring up today. And then Son has to deal with there's a whole bunch of racist abuse that he has to put up with as a result. So the Tottenham Hotspurs, his football club, put out a tweet saying we stand with Son. And it was almost like this online Asian flu, whatever type of thing, like another Asian ruined the experience of a white man. You're messing up, our whole thing. And it turned into, and look, I think it was not a foul. I think Son played up the injury. I mean, I'm sure
it flopped a little bit. Yeah.
He flopped. That's what they do. Yeah. I mean, that's Sports. What you do.
LeBron James made a whole career out of it. Come on.
And it worked. It got the goal. I mean, he didn't know they were going to eventually score, but the goal that ended up at the end of that play was taken back. To me, though, it goes right into what inadvertently, I didn't think it would work out this well. I had no plan for this, but it works out well that you lay out this whole trajectory in history, almost in film, of what I'm going to keep calling like this, the weaponizing of the incel thing. And here's another version of the white man being denied his moment, his conquering moment of getting his team a goal because this Asian did what everybody does in the game and upset them. And then that opens the door. Now all of the white Tottenham Spur fans can now with I guess substance or substantiation go in on this dude being an Asian.
Well,
and not the fans of Spurs. I'm sorry. The fans of United go in on him. Anyway,
and these are both British ball clubs, right?
Both British ball clubs in the English Premier League vying for they won't win the league, but trying to get at least into the top 4. Yeah,
well,
so it's competitive.
This what immediately comes to my head is what people. Adam Curtis talks about this in his most recent documentary series that just came out. Can't Get You Out of My Head. I mean, Yellow Peril started in Britain. The narrative of Yellow Peril started in Britain. So that's just embedded in their psyches. So naturally, if someone Asian costs them something, it is the revisit of, the doctor in the lab,
And check this out. They even came back and won the game. They even came back and won the game.
They don't care. They don't care. But Adam Curtis in his new piece, Can't Get You Out of My Head, which is really interesting piece. He's great. I mean, politically, it'd be interesting to see. I'm sure that some people have said that there's some holes in it, in some of his stuff. But I think
as some bad politics.
Yes, yeah. But as a tapestry, it's very interesting. But he has some politics are a bit. I know I can see there's some things in there. I'm like, Adam, I don't know about that one right there. Okay. But he talks about in it that the whole Yellow Peril kind of idea is just embedded in their society. So the fact that when coronavirus happened, that it was so easy for them to kind of slide into that is because it's always been there. So, wow. You got this Asian brother, he upsets them. It's like their default. They just slide back into the Yellow Peril default that exists with them. And that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, there's been a lot of it, and then, just even with the past week, I mean, a number of black ball players have suffered a number of, like any moment, any chance, if they're perceived as causing white fans some angst, everything just opens right back up. And to his credit, I forgot his name, man. But one brother just walked off the field. He was like, "I'm out. I'm not gonna just be out here, I can't, honestly, I can't even imagine that. But anyway,
people don't know. I lived in Spain for a few years, and I'm not a football fan, but I did attend some games, and I remember one of my best friends though who lives there. He is black, and he grew up there, and he would tell me about and he's a big, football fan. Like football is his thing, and he grew up in Barcelona. It's part of their culture, living there. And he said he would things that I couldn't see he would point out the racism that even existed in like the moment to moment of the game and moments. Or I remember when incidents would happen with certain clubs, he would send it to me because I was living there. I told him I want to know about this stuff, and he would send it to me. I would go, wow, I couldn't imagine being a ball player there. I just couldn't.
Yeah, I follow. I've been meaning to reach out. I should see if we can arrange an interview at some point. I follow. Is it Pitch Black Sports on Twitter? An account that follows the travails of black ball players in world football,
wow.
and it's pretty deep. And it's still, I mean, it's still a major problem. So, but listen, Mtume Gant, man, I really appreciate you, man. I can't wait to do this some more. I do hope, you know, in the near future, there are versions of this all over this platform. I love the work you're doing, and I'm mad that I'm this late to it. And I want to have many more of these conversations.
I'm down any time, man. I truly appreciate it for sure.
So real quick, tell everybody where they can find, you know, where your work will be, and anything else that you need to let people know before
so you can find me on Twitter. It's actually Gant, Mtume Gant. So it'd be Sir.
What am I
saying?
I keep saying
it's
that.
all good. It's all good,
man.
It's all good. So it'd be at Sir Core Gant at Twitter. You could also go to Gates Pod, Gates POD. And follow us there for the Within Our Gates podcast. That's probably the most centralized thing. And, you know, I got a couple films that I'm working on now. I have some older films. If you go to my Twitter, I also have my website, altereyecinema.com, if you want to look at any.
Can we see those films that you've done?
Yeah, Whiteface. There you go. Perfect. Whiteface is and if you go to my website, altereyecinema.com, you can rent Whiteface and Spit, both of them. And they're also, you know what? A better place to go check them out that I really want to pump. I didn't think about this, is Quelly TV. Have you heard of Quelly TV?
Oh, of course. I'm a member. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's on Quelly. You can watch them on Quelly.
I didn't even know that.
I joined up with shout out to Deshauna on there who is running an amazing platform. Really impressed. I didn't get the films on there until I think this past October. It's been pretty recent. But they're on there. Shout out. Actually, be honest with you, I'd rather you go to Quelly. If people want to, you can get them on Vimeo and watch them. But if I had to say a preferred platform, I would definitely support Quelly TV.
Right on. And the Within Our Gates podcast is available everywhere. And you all are part of the crew with Q and them too.
Yeah,
right? I didn't
part
even know
of
that till late.
Yeah, to Resistance Noir, Q and all of them. Q is the part of the reason why Within Our Gates happened. You know, I have been meaning to do something. Q and I, you know, online in various forums had, you know, we've been in regular conversation on stuff, and he just said, you know, if you want to do it, I'll give you a piece. And I, you know, it was first just me, and then me and Adam hooked up, and Adam was just the perfect person to do it with, because, you know, I mean, we were texting before. A lot of what happens is me and Adam will just watch a movie. And we go, man,
that's it,
brother. It's just like, you know, all types of stuff. We're just like, brother, did you see this? You know?
So I think like we got to do a whole bunch of things. Like we need to have audience picks for you and Adam to review. We got to like do a whole bunch of stuff to like you know like I gotta go back and get my list of movies together and get you all to talk about them.
I'm more than down.
Turn that into something too, because that whole point, man. The films that Black radicals grew up watching, that's a whole other thing. It's not films we want people to see now.
No,
it's the stuff that we've been beaten up by our whole lives.
And what the trip is, like, there are films that Black radicals should be embracing. That we have like Black radical films, not even just in this country too. You got films from Africa that I'm like, you know, why are we running the Django? You know what I'm saying? And not running to you know to other stuff. Why are we running the Killer of Sheep and things like that for our stuff? We want to. Why are we not running? Why are we running to 12 years a slave and not running to Sankofa?
Please,
like I don't get it. Or we're not running to other directors. And I gotta say, I mean, this is a criticism that seems harsh. I don't think that Black Americans watch films out of Africa enough. We just don't.
Oh, I don't think. I mean, it's
we just don't. I mean, and there are some kick-ass movies come out of Africa like right now, like serious directors who are making great films, you know, and we just ignore them. You know, I go to a lot of these, you know, art house movie theaters, you know, before the pandemic, you know, and I go see these African films, and I see a couple black folk there, but not enough. You know, it's harsh. I know I say it, but I don't see it.
I mean, I think it's a bigger issue with promotion. And
totally agree.
We get the opposite promoted so heavily, but I think you're right. There has to be a way to get more interaction with black folks in these films, myself included. I mean, there's so many I'm not aware of or I haven't seen either. So I'd like to.
Totally, and I do blame it on the publicity, and you know, to a certain degree, I think there's certain black people who don't mind just having only on white audiences who make some of these films. That's a whole other conversation.
That's true too. That's clear.
They don't push themselves to get to their people outside of it. You know, there's a whole lot of things with it, but you know, there's so much more. I agree with you. That to me is a conversation we definitely should have.
Well, next time, my man, more times up, we'll be getting to him. So, but Mtume Gant.
Yes,
my apologies.
All good, bro.
Thank you very much, man. Looking to many more. I appreciate you, man. This was great. Take good care, man.
Peace.
All right, peace. All right, everybody. Big shout out to Mtume Gant, and we definitely say peace to him, knowing he is fighting for it. That was a great conversation, as I knew it would be, and we definitely look forward to having many more conversations with him, not only on this show, but hopefully on this platform, just in general. I'm openly trying to recruit him to this platform because, you know, if you didn't get it just from this conversation, wait till you hear the rest of his podcast, and I think so many more of you are already aware of his work. You know, even beyond that. So, you know, definitely shout out to him, and thanks to him, and we'll look forward to getting Adam on here too. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.